I will start off with introductions. Ladies first, Rosemary, and then we'll go down the line and come over to Pranav. So brief introduction, and the returning ones don't need to go into the full CV, Anmol, but otherwise. And check the mics, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rosemary Sagar, and I manage a single-family office out of Miami. Can you hear me all? Yes. Okay. So I spent 20 years in institutional management, managing pension assets for GE, and I headed the International Investment Division at U.S. Trust. And the last 20 years, I've been in the family office world and investing into alternatives. We're very opportunistic and invest in about 10% directly into companies, only about 15% of the public markets, and everything else is niche funds with unique strategies.
Thanks, Rosemary. Pranav, we'll just go down the line. Brief introduction. And you might need, if your microphones don't work, you can share.
Hello. I don't think this works. Is it working? Yes. My name is Pranav Jyoti. I'm a GP with Mirae Capital. Met a few friends over here who have been our LPs. I didn't know them, but hopefully they've been making good money. We set up the business predominantly with creating value for large Japanese families with the structure of helping families grow overseas, not only to align within global expanse, but build value across. We today sit on $10 billion of AUM, out of which 60% is for venture debt, and the rest of them is cuts across multifamilies, specifically within Southeast Asia market. I sit on the board not only validating a multi-fund structure, but also creating constant operative control on businesses that need the next scale to build value, both through B2B and B2G support. And I think that's really have been our piece. We'll work very closely with fund-of-fund strategy, with single GP funds that know their market and can use our next large ticket size to build value. So that's a little about me. I'm an economist by education, went to University of Chicago, came back and build businesses for myself. Also come from a family which is 200 years old. And one of the large pieces that we cut across is both professionals setting up Mirae Capital, but also have Jyoti Family Trust, who's building a constant approach for the legacy for the next generation. Excited to know more.
Thanks, Pranav. Amir?
Hi, my name is Amir Farman Pharma, Connection Capital London, originally from Iran, left 50 years ago, and I'm glad that the fireworks there have ended, the 12-day war. I thought we were going towards Libya, Iraq, Syria type of country, but seem to have come out of it, and we invest in all asset classes.
Hi guys, Anmol here. I'm going to keep it short and sweet, as Keith said. I've already done this before, but was an exited founder at 19, went into corporate at JP Morgan and Marsh McLennan, did a large transaction worth 3.2 billion, started my own venture studio, scaled that up, started working with family offices, launched my own multifamily office, 30 families we deploy for, and have my own VC fund. So, yeah.
All right, well, thanks everyone for the intros. Just to kick it off, how do you weigh the decision to invest directly into a startup versus joining a fund or some other structure? And because you were relatively brief, Emma, we'll start with you.
So I think for us, since we have our own fund, and a lot of our sort of family offices that we work with, we put them, if they do want to invest with us or co-invest with us, or they have been co-investing with us, in front of our fund structure and don't really look at it as a fund-to-fund investment. So from our perspective, if I was to start looking at it, my identification would be, what is that one key area which I want to be involved in, but I don't have the expertise, right? So where can I leverage that GP's network, which opens certain doors, which is still complementary to what I want to do, right? But I can't seem to sort of do it, right? So rather than, and it's the same process, that goes when large companies, they want to add a different aspect or a additive complementary service into what they're doing, but they don't want to build it from scratch, and they acquire, all right? From an LP side, it's a relatively, I believe, similar way of thinking, and I think, Pranav would be a great person who can add on it, is we want to be in this niche. It's growing really quickly, but we don't want to start it from scratch. There's a GP who's been doing this for 10, 15 years. He knows everything about it. He's killing it. He's done those kind of investments. Let's take us. And that's our angle. And, part of what we do as a GP as well as a multifamily office is there's certain angles where we have a massive moat, right? Especially in the Indian diaspora part, right? Investing in those guys who, resulted in 181 unicorns in the last 15 years. Well, we have that network, right? And we can leverage that. So I think that's the thing for me.
Right, thanks. And since you turned it over to Pranav, we'll go to Pranav next.
I think one of the things that we've been very careful about is not to be bankers. And not to forget that investing is not necessarily only about IRR, it's actually about building businesses. And sometimes in the construct of GP-LP relationships, getting money from pension funds, building value consistently, we forget that businesses is about people. And businesses build businesses further with the relationship that cut across. And for us, our journey of raising capital from 0 to 10 billion has been in less than 5 years. But that came from 25 years of building wealth for families for many, many, many generations. In my last previous avatar, I took one of the large Japanese company IPO for $19 billion, which was a 43-year-old company. Today it's 60 billion. So a lot of people build a lot of wealth. And I think one of the things that we become very objective towards is that we consolidate capital, which we manage, but also look at capital which needs to be put into companies that can build value tomorrow. And for that, B2B and B2G become a key element for us to create opportunity from a business standpoint. From a fund standpoint, we actually take a core GP scale, ideally with a single GP fund. And of course, Anmol is a great example of that. But fundamentally, we don't want to take away the creativity or the control of the GP for the category he or she represents. But we want to be the person for them to identify and build the category for the next generation, while giving them the card to say that don't back out when the company that you have found is going to take the Series B, Series C, Series D leap, and I can give you a larger fund check. And that gives a very clear aspect of being operatively heavy. And we are neither PE, we are neither VC, so we fall ourselves in a VC plus PE minus set. So it has a very operational heavy task. So we are not bankers, we are operative owners, and we want to make sure that businesses succeed. IRR will follow.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks, Pranav. Rosemary, over to you.
I'd like to just build on what Pranav said about building a company. And I'd like to really highlight that there's a huge difference between venture investing and builder capitalism. And builder capitalism to me means you don't accept defeat, you just keep tweaking and pivoting until you get it right, and just never give up. And that's what I like in regards to investing directly into companies, because you have more impact, you have more control, and you can help more to shape your own destiny as a result. And in terms of investing in a fund over the years, well, it was very different when I started out investing in venture funds 20 years ago. And heading into 10 years of negative real rates, it was a no-brainer, just allocate and everything goes up, and long duration investments are favored. But that's changed a lot. What used to be a 10-year fund is now, if you're lucky, 20 years. And so there's a lot of frustration with that artificial life of a fund that it just results in a lot of sales to secondaries in the secondary funds in the end. So in fact, what we've done over the last 10 years is to actually replace any venture fund investing and also PE fund investing with secondary fund investing. And not the systematic kind, buying out GPs or whatever, but really underwriting to the underlying company, finding loose shareholders that need liquidity, that were early investors, and need liquidity for reasons totally uncorrelated with company performance. So that's been working very well for us.
And just as a follow-up, that's very interesting. Are you using a platform like Carta, or are you using some internal tool, or how are you offering on the secondaries?
We've actually sourced a couple of funds where we're totally in sync with the strategy, and I actually sit on the LPACs, and so I do have insight and some direct impact. But choosing from a secondary platform is just a little too messy and a little too time-consuming. So I do like to farm that out to guys who have my full confidence in doing that.
Great, thanks, Rosemary. Amir?
I use a very sophisticated platform called Instagram. I was watching a video late night, maybe it was Khosla. He said the next unicorn is going to be a company that crowdsources data, is scalable, and has some IP that creates a moat. So I invested in the property sector, the real estate boards, very unsexy, where margins are getting squeezed for landlords due to taxes and regulation, into an app that helps tenants like do the referencing checks. I illustrate with a concrete example, but this makes properties be vacant less often, so it's money saving for the landlord, it's time saving for the tenant. They don't have to keep doing it again and again. And we're aggregating data, doing it, and using AI tools to evaluate it and manipulate it. So within our portfolio, if there's going to be a unicorn, it's going to be this company, Tensure.
Got it. And when you said Instagram at first, I was wondering in my head if that was SEC compliant. But thanks for expanding on that. Pranav, turning over to you. Given we know that the last couple of years, I think it'd be an understatement to say that a lot has shifted, a lot of things have changed. So given the macroeconomic environment, rates, inflation, selective capital, how have the risks or red flags in investing in startups changed, specifically in the last year or two?
Yeah, I think a lot of things have changed, but I think there have been three general denominations the way we look at it. And I've said that in the past. US is capitalistic, so we make sure that our legal is really, really tight in that aspect. So Forex, and when I say legal, it's Forex relationship, cap table relationships, secondary equations. Europe has largely been very legacy-led businesses. So we make it a point that we have involved businesses where once we are carefully evaluative about the leadership's past history, their ability to constantly create value, creates a very strong build story for us and us to look beyond just a valuation number. And then it's rest of the world. Rest of the world is all about relationship. And I think for us, between Middle East, between Japan, India, Southeast Asia, you need to know who your direct board is and who is the advisory board around that company. Now, people may think that small companies don't have that. Startups will not be able to afford it. In fact, I've really had scenarios where the success of the entrepreneur has been directly proportionate to the advisors around them. And for us, when we look at these three dimensions, we look at hedging any risks based on valuation, based on revenue, based on the ability to take decisions, to be in a continual fashion. And I think for us, when we work with families in Middle East, we work families in India, we work families in Japan, I think the key element is partnership. And going back to your last question, I wanted to comment on that. The way we look at making sure that we are constantly striving to build a successful business is because we are operatively involved to make sure that that business succeeds. And the only way to do that is sales. Can we partner on a B2B and a B2G level to increase sales? Sales is the only measured format for us which gives us a clear alignment to due diligence. The due diligence which is active, which is operative, and not creative of what Big Fours do. It's really sentimental to what the business should be, not only now, but for the next generation.
Thanks, Pranav. And I'm glad you tied it back into the operator, something that I'm a big fan of, and then to actually, as we get pitched, many of us in the room get pitched all the time, you actually have sales. Sounds obvious, but not always. Rosemary.
I have to say the two companies that I'm the most excited about are still pre-sales, but they have a very fat pipeline, each of them. So there's hope, imminent hope. But yeah, I mean, back to your original question, I think the risks have really changed considerably, and it's really had a lot of impact on the criteria for investing, and because. You know, if you're evaluating future cash flows and future earnings on and discounting with a negative real rate, then then go for it. Take all the risk you want. But given the high cost of capital now, it's really changed everything. And you keep reading about all the dry powder that funds still have. Well, but think it through. I mean, that dry powder is not getting spent. And why? Because they know that raising the next fund is going to be near impossible. It's against this macro backdrop. So they're going to preserve that dry powder as long as they possibly can. Otherwise, they're out of jobs, right? So they'll be managing nothing. So it's. I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, thank you again. And that was the genesis of that question. Continue on, Amir.
In the rising cost environment, companies that have heavy physical infrastructure costs or depend on transactional growth instead of like domain differentiated IP are much more at risk. And those who have domain IP are better guarded against commoditization. So that's how we mitigate the risks now.
I think for us, we sort of look at it from both lenses, from the macro side and micro side, right? And as all the panelists have touched upon here, when the macro challenges come in, you need to then pivot and see, you know, where the opportunities present themselves. You need to have that global network, connectivity, partners. And, you know, we always sort of try to leverage that, right? Having B2G connections, right? If you are very well connected to the governments, you know, no matter what is happening, you'll have, you know, initially the first, you know, evidence of something is about to happen. We need to pull the plug or we need to move ahead with this. So I think that we always sort of try and do. And then the second thing is also on the education side. So going from the very, very developed to the very, very early stage. So I've been a guest lecturer in Imperial, LSE. I'm about to do one in NYU. So starting from the very, very early stage as well, identifying, well, okay, well, this is our ending, right? This is what the government wants to look at. This is what's happening towards the end. But what about the start? Where is the innovation coming from? What is the youth wanting to do? What is the new inquisitive thing? And understanding from the masses as well. So we always sort of try and keep a balance between the three. And that's very well sort of managed because we have a venture studio arm where the whole thesis is we only invest in companies which are sub 6 million in valuation. Then the fund sort of sets in the middle. And again, we are hedging by going for a very particular niche, right? Focusing on the diaspora and de-risking ourselves there. And then the multifamily office sort of binds it all together, right? Having those governmental connections, having those later stage buyout opportunities and so on and so forth.
Thanks. Only thing I would say about the B2G side, especially if you're early stage, same as in banking, it's really hard to get from early stage and then get a government contract, even if you have the the best technology. So these things go by really fast. So I want to kind of finish this panel, which will take the next 8 or 10 minutes. But I want to talk about what is something very exciting to you, and also what is an underappreciated risk. You know, Rosemary had talked about, if we don't realize the cost of capital is certainly, I don't know if it's underappreciated, but we're all aware of it. So we're going to just continue to go down the line. Well, actually, we'll mix it up. Amir, you start, and then we'll go down this way. So Amir, Anmol, and we'll go this way.
What's exciting to me is maybe a bit off theme, but if you Google Medicine Festival, you'll see traces of a global movement of people who utilize plant medicine and and music ceremonies, sort of alternative healing. And I'm quite engaged in that, and I've helped, use that to heal myself from various trauma, revolution, divorce, and so I'm compelled to help others. And also the sense of injustice that so many plant-based remedies that can save lives are somehow poo-pooed by medical establishment. So it's very important to me to make them available to patients. That, and also in the cannabis sector, also the construction materials, which are hemp-based construction, which are an important part of solution for climate and energy use and soil remediation. That's what's exciting about to me. And in terms of risks, you had a question about, how do you make sure you don't get ripped off and teams can execute? And I thought I'd compare Iran to England and America, where I've made my career. I'd heard someone say that trust is the coin of the realm. In these cultures where you have law and systems and trust, there's investment, therefore there's employment and there's growth. And in those dysfunctional countries where there's no trust, it's just a long way down to Bangladeshization. So as a corollary to that, trust is the coin of the realm, I came up with this, that charm is the currency of crooks. Because I looked at my own investment history, and I always found that I was somehow charmed through storytelling to part with money. So I would just tell people this warning that, don't let charm overwhelm you. We rely on external, people like Kroll Associates or
And this sounds like a topic for a future panel, a future conference, but we could go really deep on that. And I think the OG Bitcoiners on the table over there would probably tell you that they're working on a trustless society. So, but thanks, Amir. Anmol.
I think even though I'm investing in everything AI, I would almost like to say boring is the new sexy. And what I sort of mean by that is looking at companies who are integrating AI into very native sort of industry, which is health tech, construction, property tech, where there's mass availability and mass sort of opportunity because there's lots of capital is going in, there's regular cash flow, yet they're a little bit slow to adapt to this new technology, right? So, for example, in health tech, we invested in a company which uses your phone, right? And just through doing a scan, it's able to give you your heart rate, your HRV, changes in skin over time, blood pressure, calculates a stress score. If something isn't going good, in the back end, it recommends, what to sort of try on the medication side, connects you to a clinic nearby and so on and so forth. And that's just on a phone, right? And not to say, prescriptions and general sort of remedial stuff doesn't exist, but not to this scale. So we like these kind of technologies which are, sort of decreasing the inefficiency or the gap in the market via fastening up an already existing process or making it more solid. And I think something which is being underlooked or a sort of an opportunity. I think the credit market, and especially when it comes to Series A plus, Series B sort of companies, I think there's a massive gap there because in the early stage, and again talking just from the B2B software side, a lot of the time it's either tech, it's sales, commercializations, building solid foundation, solid founders, cool. You get to Series B stage, you're worth about 150, 200 million, right? Give or take, you're making 20, 30 million revenue. After that, it's, I mean, sales are still part of it, but after that, I think it's really putting in the cash. And I think there is a big opportunity there that now a lot of people are either looking at liquidity from secondaries, which is great as well, right? We've done a ton of stuff there. But I think rather than that, using private credit and also seeing if there's an opportunity to turn that into maybe a convertible note investment, right? And being creative with the structure and seeing, can we go back to seeing IPOs coming in and getting that liquidity back in the market through that sort of sub-segment? So we're working with a couple of families in that.
Thanks, Anmol. Rosemary.
Well, the biggest opportunities are really, going back to the fundamentals of startup investing, find some of the biggest unaddressed problems and that have very few solutions. So that's what my two favorite investments have in common. And one is that has the most potential probably is this weather management company that can create rain out of clear skies called Heka Cloud. And that's an example of old technology which emits negative ions into the atmosphere and made viable and scalable thanks to AI, which automates the whole process so you don't need a German technician manning the equipment 24/7. So that has huge applications for preventing forest fires, for agriculture, for reducing Delhi pollution by converting the winter fog into rain, which cleans the air, and so on. And the other company I'm really excited about is a detection of deepfake audio. And the founder is ex-US Navy intelligence, and the senior advisor is the former a major general, former head of intelligence of the Southern Command, and that interestingly enough, that's an anti-AI investment because they can detect cloned voices in real time and using physics and not AI, because you can't use AI to combat AI.
Thanks, Rosemary.
Well, for us, we have a very general philosophy. As a fund of fund, single GP, let the GPs lead what they are doing. But on an overarching perspective, we call it HERO, where H is healthcare, E is education, entertainment, real estate, and operational control. If I were to look at that, each of these companies have had opportunities pre or post revenue. In fact, we have an investee company over here which we put 800 million, in which we've still to yet go to market. So putting in something that we build value. While on the other side, we also have the orientation of making sure that businesses that are so confidential, and we were earlier investors in blockchain in various aspects, large investments in data centers, one of the largest buyers of renewable energy to build new data centers. So what we look at is that how can our hero be benefited with technology? How can each of those areas benefit aligned consumer behavior pattern? And how can we make sure that end of the day, the businesses last the partner in itself? And I think those are areas that become very central part of it. And we've generally had a very successful approach of how businesses are scaling up. In fact, to a point where we often put money in companies that are going bad. And I think I say that often, and I've spoken to you, Kevin, about it, is that, in a classical VC setup, you're very proud that 4 out of your 10 companies survived. I mean, our ratio is about 8 to 10.
I don't think it's that high usually, but yeah.
But on the other side, one of the things which is important for us is that if 2 of my companies are not doing well, I actually put in more money to make sure that happens. I mean, we don't want to be constant about it, but I think the ability to be deeply involved on making sure that can we escalate their being purely because to be more operative has been our secret sauce to be involved. If it's not about IRR, it's not about business, but it's about, does the founder pay taxes on time? Does the founder pays vendors on time. And I think those things
Well, I think these are definitely, I don't want to
Areas,
say
yeah.
intangible. I think these are all very important points of consideration. And what I got out of this, and I want to appreciate Rosemary, Amir, Anmol, and Pranav's time, is that as much as we talked about technology, I love technology, we talked about AI, that there really still, at this point, is the human element. And that's the point I heard repeatedly today. So thanks, everyone. I know we're out of time, so we will come back. And then also, tomorrow, my final panel will be on the health tech and longevity, so hope to see you there. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Kevin.